Many people would agree that high school is a tough experience even at the best of times, and that's just for the average person. But what if your class were made up of people who were extremely motivated, extremely intelligent, and extremely competitive? And what if you thought one of those people was so desperate to be on top that they were willing to not only threaten, but also able to carry out harm upon anybody else to get there? Well, you would have the background for Nancy Drew Warnings at Waverly Academy. This is Dan. I make Let's Plays on YouTube, and today I'm going to share my thoughts with you about Nancy Drew Warnings at Waverly Academy. This is the first video of this type on my channel, so I just want to present my intention clearly. I don't intend this to be a review of the game in the traditional sense. In my opinion, a review would require a person to be fair, unbiased, and critical. My intention is just to present my thoughts, such as they are, to you and invite discussion, either in the comments below or in my Discord. See the description box below. Having said that, I know not everyone watches until the very end, so I'll take a moment to make this request early on. If you find that you end up enjoying this video and want to see more, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. These are the best indicators to me, because of YouTube analytics, that you want more of these type of videos. Also, if you enjoyed the video but have some constructive criticism, please leave those in the comments below. I always strive to make the best videos that I'm capable of and want to do my best to ensure that they're worth watching. With that cleared up, let's get started, shall we? For those who are unaware, the Nancy Drew series of games are one where you play as Nancy Drew, a detective of sorts who becomes involved in mysteries which you, as a player, need to find the underlying truth to. For this game in particular, Warnings at Waverly Academy, Nancy is asked by the headmistress of Waverly Academy to come and investigate a case. You see, Waverly Academy is an extremely prestigious school and has a program that allows the valedictorian to get a full scholarship to the university of their choice. Not only that, but it sees some of the brightest girls as its students, many of whom are confident, capable, and competitive. However, now the parents of the student are threatening to sue the school over an incident where someone going by the Black Cat is sending threatening notices and causing harm and mischief to those not heeding the warnings. Nancy must pretend to be a new student, covertly uncover who exactly the Black Cat is. Before I continue, if you're interested in experiencing the game, I invite you to do so, as I make no assurances of hiding spoilers. I will link the playlist of my Let's Play down in the description box below for your convenience. Before I begin with my thoughts proper, I should note that this is only my second Nancy Drew game thus far. I know that there are a great many Nancy Drew games, and there may be differences or changes that I'm unaware of, so I apologize if I speak out of turn. I'm only presenting my thoughts and experiences as I come into them, and inviting you, the viewer, to discuss. With that said, I don't know if all Nancy Drew games are like this, but Warnings at Waverly Academy had an Edgar Allan Poe theme. Specifically, it comes from one of the school's founders, Holloway, being a huge Poe fangirl. I love this. In my opinion, she really created a cohesion among all the parts of the game. She created a reason for everything to work together. She was central to the plot, and her admiration of Poe is really felt. In the game, due to her love of Poe, it was his unpublished works that were the catalyst for all the goings-ons. The name The Black Cat was used as a nod to Poe. The puzzle involving the totems and titles of Edgar Allan Poe's works was a big sign declaring Poe's significance. The puzzle with the raven was a little homage, and surprisingly, the giant pendulum at the end was a bombastic way to once again pay tribute to Edgar Allan Poe. As for Holloway herself, her influence was felt even more so, obviously. It was her love of Poe and fortune to have been there at his deathbed that really kicks off the central plot. Her pet cat became a story of legend after passing, which may have played a part in choosing the moniker The Black Cat as the signing of the threatening notes. Her diary held the keys to a number of puzzles. She was likely the reason the Blackwood Society was formed, a means to safeguard the clue for passing the penultimate puzzle. Less an influence from Holloway or Poe was the Victorian-esque architecture. It was very apt, but also gave the setting a believable charm. It makes sense that the building itself had this kind of styling, since it harkens back to the school's founding. But in the modern age, the fact that it has retained this styling speaks volumes. It's a classy and timeless look that suggests its long-standing prestige, a kind of look that implies wealth or higher status. Pretty on point for a place like Waverly, but it also gives the sense of an actual place you could visit, a small, charming school which has survived such a long time because of its academic excellence and the love of the students who came before. They have a piano at the entrance, for crying out loud. I had spoken with a channel viewer about this, but there is some kind of magical charm with this game that I just can't quite make out. Usually, whether it's movies or books or games, it's the characters that make up this charm, this allure. But neither of us found any of the characters particularly likable. I gave it some thought, and maybe that itself is part of the charm. It feels more real. Much like how people are in real life, we often have people we either tolerate or enjoy being around. But even those people have little things that nag at you or things that really get you going. But we keep those people around anyways despite that, or even because of that. Let's have a deeper view of each of the main characters. Take Leela, for example. At first glance, you see that she's the sporty type. I mean, they have her character model always kicking and balancing that ball. And the interactions you have with her center around darts and air hockey. And stereotypically, she's extremely competitive. She's very gung-ho about having some competition in the games, constantly challenging you to them, and she's incredibly confident in herself in multiple sports. She did enroll on a sports scholarship after Hall. But that's not all there is to her. Beneath that exterior, she's an incredibly capable, intelligent, motivated, and confident girl. Mel alluded to Leela being an academic prior to getting into sports, citing it as a tragedy that Leela is so into sports now. But as Leela mentions, you can't get into and stay at Waverly on sports alone. She has to do well in school to stay, and it's obvious that she has pulled this off since she's one of the top students vying for valedictorian. And this she pulls off while having extra time to just train and wait around to challenge at games. She might come off as boastful, but really, she recognizes that there's a lot that rides on her to pull off what she has. Losing her scholarship means losing all the effort that she's put into to get as far as she has. To be as boastful about her abilities may in fact be a declaration of her determination to do everything she wants and needs to do, and recognition that even with the weight on her shoulders, that she can pull it off. Mel, mentioned earlier, is another mixed bag of things that feel true to life. She comes off initially just as the stereotypical goth girl who doesn't care much for her status or social standing, someone who stands out just to be different because that's just who they are. But try parsing out the situation. You find out that she is at Waverly because she's a legacy student. The women in her family have been attending Waverly for generations. Imagine the pressure she must have felt to not only have where she will be going to high school be predetermined, but also the pressure of having to make sure her academics measure up to the standard of being able to attend it. She isn't actually bucking the norms and rebelling. By attending Waverly, she is actually conforming to her family's pressures and pushing herself to live up to their expectations of being smart enough to attend the school. But in contrast, she can never truly know for certain if she was accepted due to her own work or if her family history was a deciding factor. Despite all that, you can see for yourself that she does indeed love her family and is proud of the educational heritage that she hails from. Her sign that sits above her bed is proof of that. Perhaps it can be played off as something that the women in her family indicated as a tradition that she just must follow. But at the end of the day, she does live in a dorm away from her family and can easily remove or rearrange the fixtures at her whim. And for herself, she may have fallen out of touch with Leela, but they grew up together as close friends, and I think there is some part of her that didn't want to be left behind. I think it contributes in small part to why she seems upset or bitter about Leela being such a sports nut now. Mel talks about how she's an outcast just like Corinne, and how it doesn't bother her, but I don't actually think she's okay with it. She's a member of the Blackwood Society, and when you call her out on it, she's very defensive. She says it's because it makes her feel like she's part of something bigger and historic, but isn't that just another way of saying she wants to feel connected to something or to someone? When Nancy befriends her, Mel is noticeably different than she is with others. She trusts Nancy. She trusts that Nancy won't tell anyone she's in the Blackwood Society. She trusts Nancy with helping to resolve the plagiarism accusations, not simply because there are no other options, but because she trusts Nancy. There's relief in her voice. If you miss literally all of that, the game even playfully suggests it when she requests Nancy to bring her milk and cookies. She trusts Nancy not to tell anybody about it, but even half admits that being seen getting this as a snack would be incompatible with the reputation that she's put together for herself. Izzy Romero. What can we say about Izzy? The way I see it, Izzy is pretty tragic. Outwardly, she's one of those mean girls. She puts on airs about being so nice and so perfect, but if you cross her or you don't measure up, watch out. She appears to be vain, arrogant, and self-centered, and while I still think all of that is still true, it feels like it's all coming from the same place. And that place? I don't know. But I feel like insecurity is probably the most likely answer. It has been stated that Izzy is never without a boyfriend. Naturally, that implies that her relationships never last, and that if she were to leave one, she's right back in a new one. Perhaps it's just because she's young and doesn't know what she wants and is so getting into and out of relationships, unsure why she can't be happy. Or perhaps she feels like the people she is with just don't measure up to her standards. Perhaps these could be true, but it feels like there's more there. I mean, I'll come back to that. Izzy gives off a sense of superiority, like she's better than everyone else. But how much of that is her true self? Sure, she's putting herself out there. She's the class president. She writes articles for the school column. She's the head of the Blackwood Society. She's in the running for valedictorian. But just ask her why she writes for the paper. She doesn't think it means much, but you never know if someone or that's important could one day read it. Ask her how she became the head of the Blackwood Society. Someone just dropped the cloak off with her and handed her instructions, part of which told her to do the same for the next generation. And what of her elitism? Mostly I think it's a ploy or maybe a result of her obsessively defending her reputation. But isn't that elitism? Perhaps, but it feels like it's more because of a lack of self-confidence or a lack of self-identity or a sense of inferiority. Take a step back and take a good look at everyone. Rachel, in Izzy's mind, is safe, especially now. She's no longer in a good spot for the valedictorian spot. But Leela? She's incredibly smart and she's athletically gifted. She does multiple sports on a scholarship while still also maintaining grades appropriate to be in contention for valedictorian. And she has a boyfriend on top of that. Corinne, she's incredibly intelligent too. Sure, she's mostly cast off socially, but she doesn't seem to mind, right? She just spends all her time obsessively studying and overachieving. What about Mel? She's smart, musically talented, and outwardly appearing not to give much care to the goings-on at the academy, something I'm sure Izzy holds some jealousy for. But what makes Izzy stand out? What makes her different from just being another smart girl at a school full of smart girls? Her looks? Her sociability? From where I stand, yes. Leela mentioned that all of the boys, even her own boyfriend, give Izzy looks, and she's obviously the most socially accomplished of the top contenders, having won the class presidency. So it seems like it's no wonder she would be so obsessively determined to keep those parts of her undamaged. Rachel. I really wish there was more that I could say about Rachel, or should I say Rachel and Kim. Gameplay-wise, they played a relatively minor part. You don't get a large amount of interaction with them, which is a shame. I mean, the fact that they are twins pretending to be a single student, that was a huge shocker, at least for me. Story-wise, it was fairly significant. They were the voice of the Black Cat, leaving the notes for all the other students. Other than that, I can only think that they have a sad, tragic story. They left to get away from their father. The reason is, in my opinion, a bit ambiguous, but considering they left on their own in their teenage years with no help whatsoever, and in a desperation move of using a single scholarship for them both, I'll let you fill in the possible blanks because I doubt YouTube would let me say as much. And what a life that was. They each had to live half of a life, or less, Only one could be outside of hiding at any one time, or someone would see that there were two of them. But at the same time, neither can do much more than go to class and get food. Otherwise, they would need to spend time informing each other of the ins and outs of what happened during the day in order to maintain continuity of their personality. As a result, they left a singular life full of solitude, their only social outreach being their sibling. Fortunately then, there was a snack bar, right? A struggle so hard only to have Corinne blackmail them, as they were so very close to finishing the school year, hoping against hope that they could get a scholarship to go to college. And finally, there's Corinne. Man, wow. Perhaps I'm just not observant, but that one sideswiped me. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, she is a manipulative and super smart but terrible person. Corinne managed to stay ahead academically while purposely maintaining a level of social solitude to keep anyone from finding out her true objectives. And that act of trying to be a tryhard, trying to win people's favor and affection so she could be popular, all I can say is kudos. She had that down pat. Being annoyingly wanting friendship pushed everyone else away so she could research and scheme to find Poe's works. Genius. Finding out that Rachel was secretly twins hiding from the school administration and blackmailing them due to her dirty work? Genius. And even though she was caught in the act of being basically evil, she still found a way to take Rachel and Kim down with her. Wow. Just wow. I have trouble overthinking her partly just because she was so guarded that she didn't divulge much about herself. She didn't let anyone else get close enough to know much about her. And what information there was, who knew if any of it was even true? A true 5 brain, for sure. For lack of a term that I liked, I'm going to call this section randomness. Basically, an unstructured part of the video where I talk about anything else that comes to mind that doesn't already have its own category. I feel as though I've talked about the biggest parts of the game already, certainly the most compelling parts at least. Gameplay-wise, I think it's a standard adventure-style game. You get a screen with things you interact with, and click to navigate and move your character around. You get inventory to use on puzzles, puzzles form the mechanics for progression, and you get NPCs you can talk to in order to spice things up with the story and flavor text. For an adventure game, I think the puzzles, especially at the difficulty I chose, were generally fair. I personally had issues with a few of them, such as the one with the listing of Poe's works with the dates and the one with having to search for the term Victorian in the library catalog. Otherwise, the puzzles were very fair in that I had enough information to do them, or the task list gave enough clues to get me going. Your mileage may vary on this, but it's all subjective. I will say that I really liked the cutscenes. Somehow, they were both very great because they added variety and sometimes levity, but they also had this B-movie tinge that was just excellent. Mwah! A couple of weird things that strike me at the top of the head. What was up with that secret room in Rachel's room? She amazingly got assigned a room that was a single, while everyone else got doubles that didn't look entirely larger than one she had, while also having a secret passage that leads to a super secret room, which somehow goes through the space encompassing the bathroom? Assuming that Rachel managed to get a room that the school administration knew nothing about having a secret passageway, Rachel/Kim built up a super special wall with a slide puzzle that opens said door? And what was up with that basement wall puzzle? As a player, not knowing how close or accurate my photo of Holloway and her cat needed to be, I really wish that once you solved that puzzle, you wouldn't need to continue to solve it again if you needed to reread the notes inside. It felt like someone forgot to code in a save state that shows it's already been solved in the current playthrough. Otherwise, everything else that was weird I chalked up to being the adventure game trope of having the Resident Evil designers and architects make everything, which in the case of this game seems very appropriate. Overall, I love this game. Being my second Nancy Drew game, it left me with a very positive impression and left me wanting to play more of them in the future. Given the comments I've seen thus far, and thank you to any and all commenters by the way, this was a loved and beloved game. It has this certain charm which is so hard to nail down but which certainly comes through while you experience it. I know not all the Nancy Drew games will have the same draw or appeal, but it definitely left me with a desire to try and scratch that itch once more. With that said, I hope that you've all enjoyed this video, my take, my overthinking of Nancy Drew Mornings at Waverly Academy. I present these thoughts to you to induce some discussion, both in the comments as well as on my Discord. Info in the description. I completely acknowledge that at the end of the day, I'm overthinking a video game, but you are watching a video game channel on YouTube. So really, when you think about it, I'm catering to my market. And speaking of which, I want to reiterate that this is the first video of its type on this channel. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have, and you want to see more of this type, please drop me a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. These are the biggest indicators for me to know that you want more of this type of video. Otherwise, please certainly consider dropping your take or take part in a discussion. I welcome all polite and conducive discussion. Anything rude or mean would just be ignored. Also, if you have any constructive criticism, I welcome that as well. I may not heed all advice, as there is a type, a vibe, a soul to the channel that I intend to keep, but I'm always trying to find ways to make my videos and my channel better. Thank you for watching for as long as you have. Thank you in advance for your likes, comments, subscriptions, and for joining the Discord. I hope that you've enjoyed your time with me. I hope that you'll come back for more, and I hope to see you then. Until then, everyone, bye.